Welcome to the Shepherd's Chapel with Pastor Arnold Murray. Open your Bible and let's go to class with Dr. Murray for a better understanding of our Father's Word.
Okay, I want to talk to you today about our Father's Word. I want to talk to you a little bit about the first Earth age. Many people wonder why we do documentaries on events that happened thousands of years ago. It's for a very simple reason. The reason we do documentaries is to document the fact that our Father's Word is true. That if He stated, in the beginning, I created the heavens and the earth, period, that He meant millions of years ago. Because in verse 2, He follows of Genesis chapter 1, He follows in verse 2 by saying, and the earth became, I repeat, became void and without form. He didn't create it that way. It became that way at Satan's rebellion, as it is very aptly brought forth in Jeremiah chapter 4, where he was warning the people, if you don't think I will destroy this earth age, you better look at the one before this, because I destroyed it. Don't mess with me. That's kind of what he was saying. So, that's why we go out and we do documentaries. You do documentaries, and then occasionally we find that jewel in the foreign languages that we find here, ancient Hebrew, ancient Greek. We find Chaldee. We find many languages, Ogham, the Rune language of travelers, even in this hemisphere, long before man has them recorded. Those not in the world that was, but in the earlier years of this age, anywhere from before Christ's time, during Christ's time, and even long after that. This is one of the reasons that we go on digs in early American settings, is to document that where people were here. It would be real nice if you knew where all those things, such as the Bat Creek Stone, were still hidden. So to find that information, it takes gleaning. To go to Mammoth Sites, which we're going to do in this particular documentary. We're going to Hot Springs, South Dakota. Hot Springs, South Dakota has Mammoth Springs there. It's a fascinating, interesting place. I highly recommend going there if you ever want to see the mammoths that roamed this earth, and this would be the type that were destroyed in a great catastrophe that happened on this earth somewhere around 14,000 years ago. This is the type of animal that I have shown you that a friend of mine found under the tundra in Alaska that still had buttercups in its mouth. The meat was still fresh enough in this frozen form that the sled dogs even partook of it after it was prepared for them. But this is that type of mammoth that they have there at Hot Springs. They're in the Mammoth Site, one of the better sites that you will find in the country to see those animals, God's creation, definitely, that go to that part. The mammoths at this particular site are older than 13,000 and 14,000 years because they were not destroyed. They were destroyed more in a natural setting in that they slipped into the spring and could not get back out. And we see the evidence there of other various animals that were there with them, whether it was after their carnivores, after their carcass, or whatever. But that's why we do documentaries on this subject, is to document that there was an earth age before this earth age. It is very ignorant for Christians, some of them Bible thumpers we'll call them, that insist that this earth is only 6,000 years old, when science itself can very easily document the fact that these animals are far older than that. And it is embarrassing to a student of God's Word that knows that God created this earth millions and millions of years ago. And the documentaries bring forth that truth. It is our effort to educate the Christian community as well as other people that enjoy seeing these things that are and have existed, that do or have existed in this hemisphere or even others. If you follow along with the documentaries, as an example, before this Mammoth Springs documentary, we did a documentary in Ashfall, Nebraska, which had the exact duplicate animals that you find in Africa today. So, and I'm using this as an example. We hear much talk of the plates of the earth moving and changing. How did those creatures that you only find in Africa today in this hemisphere? That lets us know there was a great deal going on, and it gives us documented proof that there was an age before this, and that our Father created a beautiful globe in which we inhabit. Most of all, it documents that His Word is true, and many people have accepted God's Word as truth because of the documented facts that we have brought forth in these documentaries that we do one each month, some months two. So it is a privilege and a pleasure to bring forth these for you. I highly recommend the site you're about to witness in Hot Springs, South Dakota. I highly recommend it. It's very educational. So we're going to go there now at this time. So sit back, relax, and enjoy Hot Springs, South Dakota. We're situated here in beautiful South Dakota. What a beautiful day. And this is certainly a site that you're going to find interesting in ancient history. And I want to introduce you to Mr. Joe Muller, who is the business manager and executive here at the Mammoth Site in Hot Springs, South Dakota. Joe, thank you for inviting us. We're very impressed with what we've seen to this date, and we're looking forward to going through.
Okay. Well, welcome, Arnold, and welcome to your viewers, and welcome to the Black Hills. And I think you'll enjoy your stay here in the beautiful Black Hills, and especially in Hot Springs. And we have a real good treat for you on a tour of the Mammoth Site. And I'll introduce you to Chris Jass, who's one of our head interpreters, and he'll take you around and give you and your viewers a wonderful tour of the site.
Great. We're looking forward to
Okay.
it. Thanks again.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Okay, welcome again to the Inside, Arnold.
Thank you, John.
I'd like to introduce you to Chris Jass, who's one of our interpreter too.
Chris, it's a pleasure being with you today. We're looking forward to your explanation, interpretation of the Mammoth Site here in Hot Springs.
Good. I hope you'll enjoy it.
I'm sure we will. If you would,
All
tell
right.
us a little about this.
Okay, we'll go ahead and start out here. I'd like to introduce you to Sinbad. And this is actually a fiberglass replica of a Columbian mammoth. We don't use the real bones to put up skeletons like this because the bones we have here are very fragile. And this is life-size. It's actually a composite. Some of the casts came from our site, and some of the casts came from a mammoth that was found in Utah. But the skeleton gives you a real good idea about the size of the mammoths. They could stand 12 to 14 feet high and weigh 20,000 pounds full grown. When we get inside, we'll be looking at the bones in the ground. And from where we look at the bones, it makes them look a little bit smaller than they really are. The skeleton here gives you a real good idea about the size of the mammoths. This is a mural that interprets what scientists believe this area looked like about 26,000 years ago. What we're actually going to be looking at is this big pond of water here towards the middle. It was originally a sinkhole, and a spring had come up and formed a pond inside of it. We believe it's the water that attracted the animals to the sinkhole. Once they got inside of it, they couldn't get back out. They died there, and their bones have been trapped here for about 26,000 years. You'll notice on the mural that there's not a lot of pine trees, and in the Black Hills we do have a lot of pine trees. Scientists don't think that there were very many, if any, of the pine trees at that time. They believe this was more of a grassland area. We'll head inside the main building here, and then I'll explain to you a little bit better how the sinkhole got here and how the animals got trapped. Okay. I'm going to use these panels to sort of explain to you how we think the animals got trapped here. Scientists believe that this area of South Dakota looked quite a bit different 26,000 years ago. Like I said earlier, they don't believe there were very many pine trees. They believe this was more of a grassland area. They believe there were fairly lush grasses here, there were mammoths here, and there had been a cave underneath our site. The cave had gotten to be so big, it couldn't hold up the weight of the land above it. So all the land above the cave came crashing down. When that happened, it left a great big hole in the earth. We call that a sinkhole. In the Black Hills, we've got quite a bit of underground water. That's where Hot Springs gets its name, from the underground warm water that comes up. A natural spring had come up. It had formed a pond inside the sinkhole. Scientists estimate that the water was around 95 degrees Fahrenheit. They believe that the climate was similar to what we have in South Dakota today, maybe a little bit cooler. 95-degree water in South Dakota during the winter time would be real attractive for mammoths and other animals to be around. Even during the other seasons, the water was probably attractive for the animals to be around. Mammoths would come to the sinkhole. They might have climbed into it, they might have fallen in. But once they were inside the sinkhole, they couldn't climb back out. The sides of the sinkhole were very steep and they were very slippery. The sinkhole was made out of spearfish shale. When that type of sediment gets wet, it's very, very slippery. So the mammoths would just slide back down every time they tried to get out. We do think the mammoths were fairly good swimmers. Today's elephants are decent swimmers. So we believe the mammoths could survive in the water for a while. Most likely they died from starving to death or from exhaustion before anything else. The mammoth's bodies would decompose at a very rapid rate because of the warm water, and the mammoth bones would be left in the sinkhole. Other animals climbing into the sinkhole may have kicked some of the bones around. They may have broken some of the bones up. While that was happening, dirt and sediment from the edges was being eroded and pushed back into the sinkhole. So there would be a layer of dirt and sediment covering up a layer of bones. Another mammoth would climb into the sinkhole and die. Its bones would be covered by sediment. That whole process of a layer of bones and a layer of sediment, layer of bones and a layer of sediment, just went on until the entire sinkhole had filled back up with bones, dirt, and sediment. The spring had dried out. When the spring dried out, it left behind a mineral. It left behind calcite. That calcite sort of cemented everything that was in the sinkhole together. It made the sinkhole resistant to weathering and erosion. Consequently, all the land that surrounded the sinkhole got eroded away faster than the sinkhole did. And that's why at the last panel down here, you can see the sinkhole's higher than the land around it. That's why the sinkhole is now a hill. Not because the sinkhole went up, but because the land around the sinkhole got eroded down faster than the sinkhole did. And we'll head around the corner here, and then I'll explain to you how the site was discovered and see a couple pictures that show you what the site was like before we had this big building around it. Okay, these pictures give you some idea what the Mammoth Site looked like before it was the Mammoth Site, I guess. This top one up here shows you actually the sinkhole. This more yellowish colored sediment is the sinkhole, and you can see that the sinkhole was higher than the land around it, and I explained that back there. In 1974, they were going to do some land leveling. They were going to bulldoze that hill off, and they were going to put housing here. The man that was running the bulldozer, doing the leveling, scraped across one of the long tusks with his bulldozer, and he split it in half. He picked up some pieces from the tusk and took them home and showed them to his son. His son had been taking earth science and geology classes down in Nebraska at Chadron State College. His son came back up here and looked around and found a mammoth tooth. And he took that to Dr. Larry Agenbrod at Chadron State, who confirmed that it was a mammoth tooth. They came back up here and they talked to Phil Anderson. Mr. Anderson was the man who owned the land, who was going to do the housing project. And he agreed to hold off on his housing until they did some more exploration. And then about a year later, things came together where Mr. Anderson decided this would be a much neater site as something that people could come look at. It'd be a lot more valuable for science and education than his housing. So he sold all of this land and he donated the bones to a public nonprofit group that had been formed. And that's how the Mammoth Site really got started. I do want to point out that when Mr. Anderson sold the land, he sold it at his cost. So he didn't make any money off of this at all. And because of his generous nature, when he comes back to visit us, we do give him a 10% discount. And I do want you to know I worked a long time on that joke for you. So why don't we head around the corner and look at some of the bones. Let's go check out the site. Okay. We're standing down in the bone bed of the Mammoth Site. This is the actual dig site. All the bones out here are right where we found them. We haven't moved them. We've just preserved them in place. And that way people can come and see the bones in a natural setting instead of looking at the bones on a shelf someplace. These bones are the original bone material. They're not petrified, they're not stone, they're not rock. So we do have to do preservation work on these bones. Up here to my right, you'll see a real nice example of a mammoth skull. You can see the tusks coming out here. Actually, we used the tusks to tell us how many mammoths that we have so far. So far, we found 96 tusks in here. Each mammoth had 2 tusks. A little division gives us 48 mammoths. 45 of the mammoths that we found here have been the Columbian mammoth. Sinbad, the skeleton that was out in the front lobby, that's a fiberglass replica of a Columbian mammoth. And they could stand 12 to 14 feet high and weigh 20,000 pounds full grown. The other 3 mammoths that we found here have been the woolly mammoth. And those are the mammoths that most people are more familiar with. Those are the mammoths that had the real long, shaggy hair. The woolly mammoths were quite a bit smaller than Columbians. Actually, the woolly mammoths and today's elephants are fairly similar in size. Scientists feel that the woolies generally lived further to the north where it was colder. And the ones we found here may have just migrated down out of their territory. Why don't we head up to this next area and I'll tell you a little bit more about some of the mammoths we found here. Okay, I'm standing back down in the bone bed, and to my left here is a mammoth pelvis, the hip bones from a mammoth. By measuring these, scientists can determine whether the mammoths were males or females. So far, all the mammoths that we found at the Mammoth Site have been male mammoths. We haven't found any females. Some of the ladies that work at the site say that's because women are smarter than men. Women wouldn't have gotten trapped in the sinkhole. Scientists believe that the mammoths would travel in herds or groups like today's elephants do. Around the age of 12 or 13, when the young males reach sexual maturity, they would be kicked out of the herd until they came back to mate. So there were long time periods where the young males were out by themselves. They didn't have any herd for protection. They didn't have their mom to protect them anymore. They'd stop off here. They might have climbed down into the sinkhole. They might have fallen in. But once they were inside the sinkhole, it wasn't likely they'd be able to get back out. We have only found 23 pelvises, so there is still a chance we'll find females, but scientists don't think it's real likely. They think we're probably just going to continue to find male mammoths here at the site. We'll head down to this next area and I'll show you some mammoth footprints.
Bones, are they normally found pretty much intact, or are most of your mammoths found with bones scattered apart? Or
We've got a lot that are scattered around. A lot of that might be due to the fact that other animals were climbing into the sinkhole, kicking the bones around. There was water moving around in here. That might have scattered quite a few of the bones. We do have a couple skeletons that are fairly complete, and I'll be showing you those when we get further up here. But a lot of the bones that we find here are scattered around. Okay, you'll see these blue arrows on the wall here. They're pointing to some disturbances in the sediment. And I think most everybody probably used to go out and play in the mud when they were little kids, and even the mammoths played in the mud. We believe that these are places where the mammoths actually walked, and they compressed the layers of mud into the funny shape. You'll see that the sediment lines run really smooth until they get to where the blue arrows are pointing. And we think those are disturbances that were made by the mammoths when they were walking through the sinkhole. So we're actually looking at cross sections of mammoth footprints. We're looking at mammoth footprints from a side view. And from here, I think we'll head over to where Kathy and Terry are doing some preservation work on one of the bones that we've removed from the site. Okay, I'm sitting down here by Kathy and Terry, and they're two of the preparators at the site. Terry, why don't you tell us what you're doing?
Well, this is a leg of a mammoth, the back hind leg, and it was removed this summer from the bone bed, from the sinkhole. It used to sit over on the side over there, and this summer Dr. Eggenbrod decided that this should be removed so that they could look for bones further underneath it. And so in order to do that, we have to be very careful because the bones are so fragile. And so we put a cast on it, or a plaster jacket, and it's essentially the same sort of thing that the doctor would put over your arm if it was broken, just to protect it as we move it. So we put layers of plaster, bandages, and plaster itself over the top. And then we're able to tip it off of the dirt and move it then. And now what we're doing is opening up the jacket. We'll open this side first, and then you can see here the bone is already being exposed in some places. And then when we can see the bone, we can put preservative into it. What we're using is a liquid plastic, and this is actually butyvar mixed with ethanol. And we'll put it onto the bone very gently because it is so fragile that just the weight of the liquid itself could collapse the bone. So we go very slowly. And then once this whole side is preserved, then we'll put another jacket over the top of this and roll it over, and then open the other side and preserve the other side. Once the entire bone is preserved, we have plans for this to go on display to explain about removal of bones from here and bone preservation.
Neat. All right, why don't we move up to this next area and check out some more of the bones.
Real good. Thank you, ladies, very much. It's very impressive what you're doing.
Okay, right now I'm standing down by the back end of a mammoth. Actually, up at the top is the pelvis. It's kind of broken up, and then you'll see the back legs run right down below here where I'm standing. This mammoth was probably pretty close to getting out of the sinkhole. His upper body was probably right along the edge, and scientists feel that it probably was just eroded away. So all we've been left with is his rear end. Down here by his back leg, you'll see some of the tools that the people use when they dig here. Generally, you'll see the workers in here using small tools like dental picks, brushes, little hand trowels, real small tools like that. Once in a while, the diggers will use a bigger tool like a flathead shovel, but even when they use those tools, they just work in a chipping or scraping motion. So then if they come across bone, there won't be very much damage to it, and they can use the smaller tools to work around the bone. We are still working here. We've only uncovered maybe 20 to 25% of the sinkhole, so there's still a lot of ground in here to explore. It's estimated that it will be 20 to 30 years before the digging's completely done. When the dig is done, we'll still have bones in here. The goal of our site is to leave as many bones as we can in the ground. That way people can come and see the bones in a natural setting instead of looking at the bones on a shelf someplace, which I think is really neat. Gives you a good idea what scientists go through when they dig up a lot of the cleaned up fossils that you see on most museum shelves. Okay, from here, why don't we head up to the next area, and I'll show you one of our more complete mammoths, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about the people who dig here and when the dig goes on. Right now I'm standing by the second most complete mammoth that we found at the Mammoth Site. Up here towards the top, you'll be able to see the shoulder blade or the scapula, and then the spinal column runs down right down here. You see the rib cage out there, and then down towards the bottom you'll see the pelvis and part of the back legs. This mammoth is missing one major part. It's missing its head. Because of that fact, when this mammoth was discovered, it was given a nickname. It was nicknamed Marie Antoinette. They had to change that when they found out that this mammoth was a male. So now we call it Murray. I do want you to know that I take no responsibility for the names. The diggers have kind of a strange sense of humor sometimes. It's possible that Murray's skull floated to another section of the sinkhole. The skulls have quite a few sinus cavities, and there's quite a bit of airspace in the skulls. So it's possible the skull floated to another part of the sinkhole. We haven't been able to take bones that are scattered about and match them back up to specific animals. We can't do anything like genetic or DNA testing at the site because the tissue we need for that is gone from these bones. So once the bones have been scattered, we haven't been able to take, say, a lone tusk, a lone rib, and a lone foot bone and say all of these bones came from the same mammoth. We just can't do that with the bones that we have here. Up in this area, we do find bones from other animals also. We find some down at the other end of the sinkhole, but we found some pretty interesting ones up here. Over to the left here, just underneath the little green flag, is a cast of a skull from a giant short-faced bear. We cheated a little bit here. We did set a cast in here. We just set the cast here to show people the actual bear skull was found in this area. Giant short-faced bears could stand pretty close to 6 feet high down on all 4 legs. So they were pretty good-sized animals. They could come pretty close to looking me in the eyes standing on all 4 legs, which I think is kind of a scary thought. They stood between 10 and 12 feet high on their hind 2 legs. And scientists believe that the bear was trapped in here when he heard mammoth crying for help. The bear thought he was going to climb into the sinkhole and have a free meal. For some reason, he ended up trapped instead. We've now got the bear skull and some other bones from the bear on display out front, and I think you'll see those a little bit later on the video. I think now let's move up to the next station, and then I'll tell you all about the people who come here and dig. It's a pretty interesting group of people that come here to dig sometimes, so I'll tell you all about that. We're up by the Earthwatch display, and these are the people who dig here at the Mammoth Site. Through an organization called Earthwatch, we have volunteers that come here and dig for 2 weeks in July. We have one team for the first 2 weeks of July, and then another team for the second 2 weeks of July. A lot of the volunteers that come here and dig have no experience with this type of work until they arrive. And then once they're here, our scientific staff, Dr. Agenbrod and Dr. Mead, work with the volunteers and they show them how to do the excavation. So if any of you at home would like to come here and dig, there's a chance, you can do that. It's a real neat program. Earthwatch has digs and programs all over the world. It's a neat organization because you don't have to be an expert to come here and dig. You have to be interested. Every summer at our site, we do have a visiting scientist that comes and does research. Last summer, our visiting scientist was from the Netherlands, Dick Mol. He came and did some comparative studies on North American mammoths and European mammoths. I mentioned we only dig in July, and I suppose I should tell you why we only dig in July. There's a couple reasons for that. One of the reasons is that Dr. Agenbrod and Dr. Mead, the scientists in charge of the dig, they're both teaching at Northern Arizona University now. They're only available to be here in the summertime. The other reason is that the bones we have here are the original bone material. Like I said, they're not petrified. Bone preservation takes up a good deal of time. So a lot of the time we don't spend digging, we spend working on bone preservation. I think we should head down to this next area and you get a great view of an overview of the Mammoth Site. So why don't we move down there and check that out. We're standing on top of the overlook at the Mammoth Site, and this gives you a real good view of the site. What you're looking at now is the area where we first started the tour. And we'll be heading back down there in a couple minutes, and I'll be showing you the most complete mammoth we found in here. But I think this gives you a real good view of the site. You can see a lot of tusks in this area, and just a lot of bones in general. They're packed in here pretty tight. We've got a lot of bones in a very small space. I'm standing up towards the edge of the sinkhole right now. Our sinkhole is pretty much encased in a big building. We put the building up, and that way we could leave the bones exposed year-round. If you'll look down by the bones here, you'll see that a lot of the soil is a more yellowish-brown color. Soil's a real yellowish-brown color. And up towards where I'm standing along the edge here, you'll see that the color of the soil starts to change to a red. By that change in the soil color, scientists were able to determine where the edges of the sinkhole were. Scientists feel that there was a chemical reaction that occurred when the shale, the decaying mammoths, and the water all came into contact. It caused the soil that was in the sinkhole to turn a yellowish-brown color, while the edges remained the red. And they were able to determine that, so we could just put the building around the site. During the early years, we had to do a lot of backfilling. Everything we dig up, we'd have to rebury. But once they found the edges and got the building, we've been able to leave the bones exposed year-round. Okay, now I'm going to show you a couple casts, and I'm going to have Arnold help me. I'll hand you this one first. Why don't you just go ahead and grab onto this whole thing. Is this very heavy?
Not too heavy.
Not too bad at all. This is made out of fiberglass. It is just a cast. And this is a cast of a mammoth femur. It's the big leg bone that runs from kneecap to hip. We don't have real bones out here for people to touch because we don't want to take a chance they'd be pulled off the shelf. We had casts out here last summer, and one of them was pulled off the shelf and damaged. And with the cast, we can patch it back up or replace it. But if there was a real bone being pulled off the shelf, it would be irreplaceable. So we do just set the casts out here. Set this one back up here. And show you this one. You have any idea what this is?
That's a vertebrae.
Yeah, this is a thoracic vertebra. It's part of the spinal column. And this long extension would go up. The spinal cord would run through this opening. This extension would go up, and there would be muscle and tissue running off that extension to help support the mammoth's back. The last one we have here is one of my favorite things. This is one of the neatest things we have here. This is a cast of a lower jaw, or a mandible. And these funny looking things are the teeth. They look sort of like the tread on the bottoms of tennis shoes. Mammoths had 2 teeth at the bottom of their mouth and 2 teeth at the top. So they only had 4 teeth in their mouth at a time. That's not counting the tusks, which technically are giant incisor teeth. The mammoths were herbivores. They were vegetarians. They had real flat teeth. You can see that here. With the flat teeth, the mammoths wouldn't have been able to eat meat. It's estimated that mammoths would eat between 400 and 500 pounds of vegetation every day. So they would spend a pretty good part of their day eating. They would get 6 sets of these teeth in a lifetime, where we only get 2 sets of teeth. The neat thing about the teeth, you know how when we get our new teeth will come in from the bottom or the top of our mouths. Mammoths' new teeth came in from the back of the mouth. They pushed the old teeth out the front of the mouth. Pieces of the old teeth would break off as they ate. Each new set of teeth progressively got longer and wider. Today's elephants have a similar teething system. By comparing mammoth teeth and African elephant teeth, scientists can tell how old the mammoths were when they died. Most of the mammoths we found at our site have been younger animals in their teens or 20s. Mammoths would live to be about 65 to 70 years old. Once they got their last set of teeth and it wore down, they wouldn't be able to eat anything. They'd die of dietary stress or starvation. The same thing happens with today's elephants.
This is our junior paleontologist excavation site. It's been running nightly since June 15th. It just ended August 15th. We are still doing some special daytime digs by prearranged scheduling. Students come through. Some of them are pre-registering. Some of them are seeing our box as they come through on the tour and are signing up to dig that night. We have fiberglass replicas for Columbian mammoth bone buried here. We teach the children the names of the tools, the proper way to use a tool for excavation, once they find their bone, how to identify it, and then do mapping and field notes. Our program this year has been very successful. We've had 712 children enjoy it. We're planning on running it again next year. This year we only ran it in the evenings. Next year we are planning a morning dig as well as an evening dig. Now, yes.
Do you ever notice that children pick this up rather quickly? Do they get into the
Oh,
game?
very much so. Yes,
Well, I think
very much
it's-
so.
I think it's outstanding that you have this educational portion.
Well, in July, especially when the kids come through and they see the actual excavation going on, they get so excited. Then they say, please, please, can't we go down there? You
Yes.
can't do that. So this is our answer to
I
that.
think it's fascinating.
And this part, we use it with the education program also.
This is one of the things that I think that the site should be commended for.
Oh, thank
is
you.
that it seems that they have tried to think of everyone that might come, whether it's handicapped, and certainly handicapped people I've noticed there are ramps and so
Sure.
forth whereby they can
Sure.
come and enjoy the site.
Yeah, you bet. We have a blind group that comes down each year, and these ladies very graciously bring over some of their comparative collection. And we give them a tour, and then they do spend some time with the comparative collection so that they can learn more of what we have at our site.
Well, it's certainly you all have a friendly staff here.
Oh,
and you're to be
thanks.
commended. We're
Thank
proud
you.
of you, Sharon.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you very
enjoy it.
much.
You bet. The Mammoth Site does a lot with education. Each tour that we give, we consider that we are educating people, but we spend a lot of time with children. We're planning on spending a lot more time with children in the future. Our sign behind me says, "Do mammoths go to school?" No, but the school can go to the Mammoth Site. And that's what we do. We have an outreach program that goes out 150 miles. I'll go out, or some other representative from the Mammoth Site goes out into the classroom. We do some pre-activities, and then the children come through, go on a tour, and then they can take back a post-activity to do in their classroom after their tour. Our junior paleontologist box is part of that educational program. We do run school kids through with that if they do a prearranged schedule. Some of the other things that we've done with school groups here, we've done studies with the comparative anatomy collection. The preparators will bring their collection over. They let the children touch the bones, try to figure out what the animals ate just by the type of teeth that they have, make their comparative studies just by seeing and touching. We also did a blindfold dig last year for 5th grade students who had been studying skeletons. We brought them in, blindfolded some of the kids. The other team members had the bone or a cast of a bone, and they were asked to describe to their partner what they had. And then once they were done with the drawing, we had them show their pictures, find out where it belonged on the body, and see if they were correct. And they did a beautiful job with it. A fun activity we did last spring with Choices kids from Custer, South Dakota schools, they wanted to find out why the mammoths couldn't get out of the sinkhole. So we went across from our bus parking lot, wet down a sinkhole wall, and let them try to climb out. And boy, did we have muddy fun. We're also working on a K-5 curriculum with the Hot Springs School District. We're writing it kind of like graduated levels, a building block for each year. 1 grade starts, kindergarten starts with 1 level, 1st grade builds on that. They'll also have a pre-activity. Some questions will be installed in these children's minds, so when they come to the Mammoth Site, they have something specific to look for. While they're here, we'll have a special hands-on activity that fits their theme, and then they'll go back to the classroom with their post-activity. Each grade builds on this. Once we're through with the K-5 curriculum, we hope to start with 6 through 8 and then on into high school. We also hope in the very near future to have some kits, packets ready for teachers to either check out as a library system or to purchase for their own schools. And we have a very large supply of educational books on supply in our gift shop right now. There's a lot of books for biology, chemistry experiments, earth science, natural science, as well as just reading books about the mammoths.
Okay. This is a pygmy elephas. Mammoths also had a pygmy version. And by pygmy, what happened is that they believe that the fluctuation of the oceans allowed them to get trapped on some of these islands. And without a real predator to kill them off, they simply shrunk in size. Now, elephas this one is not mammoth. This one is elephas, and later on in the program we'll show you the difference between a pygmy elephas and a pygmy mammoth. But you can see this is going to be an entire leg when it's done in comparison to the skeleton that's out front. The skeleton that's out front that you filmed when you came in is made in a similar way. This is also fiberglass. We're mounting the backbone first, and that'll be all the vertebra. The ribs will come off, then the skull and the mandible will go out front, the legs will go underneath. When this is done, it'll be about 3 foot tall and it'll be on display. This project was a buy-a-bone. The community and people, membership into the Mammoth Site, donated money to purchase this animal or purchase this particular mount, this cast right here. The real animal itself came from Sicily, the island of Sicily, and was a gift to the Lincoln, Nebraska Museum in Lincoln, Nebraska, so that they gave permission to mount it. This is a complete animal laying right here. Here's a pelvic bone, to give you an idea of size. One of the things that the Mammoth Site does is we do all of our own exhibits, so that this is just another project in an exhibit that we do. The skeleton out front was done similar. Bondo is used to put together. Then it's all ground down, and when it's all done, then it'll all be repainted one more time so that it looks like a real animal. What this exhibit is explaining how mammoths are related. About 1 million years ago in Russia, and coming from the old world, was a mammoth called Meridionalis. Now the Meridionalis that stayed in Russia became a steppe mammoth and a woolly mammoth. And the Meridionalis that came to North America became an imperial mammoth and then a Columbian mammoth. And then eventually the woolly mammoth joined the Columbian mammoth. So only in North America do you find Columbian mammoths and imperial mammoths. And that's one of the reasons that the scientists come from all over the world to the Mammoth Site to study mammoths, is because Columbians are only found in North America. One of the connecting, or how they know that they're related, is through their teeth. The teeth plates are very important, and that's what these exhibits show. The grandfather of the Meridionalis was smaller in size and his tusks were smaller, but his teeth plates were very wide apart. Then as you moved into what was called the imperial mammoth, and he's found in places like California, he was a little taller. He was almost 16 foot at the shoulder, where the Columbian is only about 14 at the shoulder. His tusks were shaped a little different. They only had one curve to them, and his tooth plates were getting a little bit more refined than his grandfather, or his father, which would have been the Meridionalis mammoth. Then you move into what's called the Columbian mammoth, and that's what we have here at the site. The tooth plates are getting even closer together. We know that his tusks had more of a curve and he was just a little bit smaller. Why it's important is that if you just find a single tooth, you can actually tell the species of mammoth you've got by measuring so many centimeters and counting the number of plates. Then joining this Columbian mammoth was the woolly mammoth. The woolly mammoth came from Russia. His plates were real close together. His body was smaller and his tusks were more massive. And we've actually found tooth remains of the woolly mammoth here at this site. So we know that we have 3, and these are 2 of the original teeth. And if you look, you can see how much more refined the tooth plates are getting. Then we have the last 2 exhibits are on the pygmy mammoth and the pygmy elephant. If you put a large animal on an island and don't put predators on there, but give him lots of grass, instead of dying out, supposedly he gets smaller, or he shrinks, or he becomes pygmy. This mandible right here is of the pygmy mammoth, and he is closely related off the islands in California to the imperial mammoth, who was like 16 at the shoulder. The mammoth, the African, and the Asian elephants are all related, and we know that the Asian and the mammoth are more closely related because of their teeth. When you get into a pygmy elephas, you're getting an elephant, you're not getting a mammoth, but the tooth enamel or the plates on them are very similar. This is the skull and this is the mandible that go to the animal that we were putting together earlier, and when that exhibit is all done, it will go in this window. He only stood about 3 foot tall. He's found on the islands of Sicily and in Malta, Cyprus, and then the mammoth is only found off of California because he's North American again. And that's what this exhibit is trying to explain, as to how important the teeth are and how the different species have evolved, and why we think the elephant or the small animals survived on these islands themselves.
I'm standing under a wooden silhouette of Columbian mammoth. And this is about actual life size, so this should give you some idea about the size of the mammoths. And all these other wooden cutouts here are animals that we've identified at the site. We a lot of times find small bones through a process called screenwashing, and we've been able to identify 28 different species of animals here at the Mammoth Site. Terry, one of the preparators, is going to tell you a little bit more about the screenwashing.
All right. Another important part of the Mammoth Site is the screenwash process, and that's where we take the actual soils from around the bones and we put that onto 2 grades of screen, and then we take water and wash through that. What we end up with after that is about a baggie full of sediments. With this, we have some of the staff or some volunteer people pick through the actual sediments, and what we're looking for are small bones and teeth from other animals besides mammoths. Through this process, we've uncovered about 28 different species of animals. It's a very slow process because you have to go and look very carefully at each granular. After someone like Kathy has gone through the screen wash, she may find a small bone or tooth possibly of an animal. Then we can take that and compare it with our collection that we have in our lab. And this is just a sampling of what we have in our lab, and these are only the skulls. We have all the rest of the skeletons in our lab. But for example, if she finds a very small tooth, we could come and compare it to perhaps a prairie dog, and we'd get a general idea of the size, and we could possibly even figure out the exact species of the animal through our comparative collection. These are some of the displays that are on exhibit at the Mammoth Site. The first one here is of the giant short-faced bear, and these are actual bones and the skull, the teeth that have been found here at the Mammoth Site. You can see just how huge that skull is and the teeth of that bear are. And it was mentioned previously, but the giant short-faced bear stood taller than today's grizzly bear and probably weighed about the same. The next exhibit is what we call a waste of time. And in this exhibit, we're addressing 2 separate subjects. First of all, the plants, and how we figure out plants from 26,000 years ago is by taking sediments and we put them in a centrifuge, add some chemicals, and those are then isolating pollens from the different plants that grew 26,000 years ago. And what we found is that the plants 26,000 years ago are very similar to today's plants. We also have a display here that's addressing actual dung from different animals. We have found wolf or coyote coprolites, and through that scientists can determine what the animals have actually eaten. The next display is called Clues from the Past, and this is a display of some of the small bones and teeth that we have found through our screen picking process. We have also uncovered a fish skeleton. It might be kind of hard to see there, but the actual fish and the bones are still in the sediments there. This exhibit addresses woolly mammoths, and we have uncovered 3 woolly mammoths here at the site. These, however, are parts to actual woolly mammoth, the soft tissues, and these have been donated to us from Russian scientists. Dr. Irina Dubrovo from Russia donated to us the woolly mammoth hair, and these have been found in the permafrost in Siberia. Doctors Baryshnikov and Vereshchagin then donated a cross-section of the abdominal wall and intestinal content, and it's amazing that these parts are still preserved.
I'm standing down by our most complete mammoth. Right here you can see a tusk running out down below me, and then that curves up into the skull. You see the front legs and the shoulder blade, the jaw, they're all kind of jumbled up in here by the skull. And then the spinal column and some of the ribs curve out to the right. You'll see the pelvis and part of the back legs over to the far right there. This mammoth is kind of twisted in here. His body's kind of jumbled up and in kind of a funny shape. So this mammoth got nicknamed Napoleon Bone Apart. Like I said, I take no responsibility for the names. It's possible that sediment filling in here on top of Napoleon helped twist his body into the funny shape. Dr. Agenbrod, one of the scientists in charge of the dig, believes that Napoleon's body floated on the water after he died. Eventually it collapsed down into the sinkhole, and that's when Napoleon got twisted into the funny shape. But really that's just the thing. A lot of this is theory and ideas. We know the mammoths and the other animals were here sometime because we've got bones to prove that. But other than that, a good deal of this is theory and ideas.
Chris, I've always heard mentioned that it would seem that sometime in history, approximately 10 or 14,000 years ago, that mammoths became extinct. And I think it's unique here that the dating obviously goes back farther than that because of the sinkhole. What would you estimate in the coverage of time that this took place? I'll just ask you that question.
Okay. We estimate that the bones we have here are about 27,000 years old, give or take 1,000 years. But they feel from the time that the cave collapsed to the time the sinkhole filled completely back up took somewhere between 300 and 700 years, but it occurred about 27,000 years ago. So,
Chris, thank you very much for showing us through the museum, the site. It was a pleasure being here, and we thank you for your expertise, I'm going to say, in presenting it to us. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Come back again sometime.
We'll do it.
All right.
I know that the people of America, Canada, and the parts of the world that will observe this will enjoy it so very much. I compliment you on your staff, and I know that, would you like to invite people to come? I want to just turn it over to you and thank you for it.
Thank you again, Arnold, for coming and visiting us. And
Our pleasure.
Okay. And the people out there, we welcome your inquiries into the Mammoth Site. They'll be putting up an address and phone number if you want more information about the site, about our educational programs, etc. And we just like to have people come back many times because, as you see, it's an ever-changing exhibit with the in situ exhibit of the bones, plus all the new exhibits that we're adding, along with our international symposiums that we host. We have 2 coming up in September. And if you want information on those, also contact us. But once again, thank you for coming, and thanks for bringing us to the world.
It was our pleasure. Thank you very much,
Thanks, Arnold.
Joe.